This is, oh, did you hear that? Ooh, I love that sound. It's like cracking a book for the first time. That's why it's called Crack a Book, people. Okay, that was exciting. Hi, everybody. It's me from the future, and you're about to watch my July book haul, which I filmed forever ago in July, but I never found time to sit and edit it and put it up on YouTube. So I'm probably releasing my July book haul with my August book haul, but I wanted to let you know, just give you a heads up. Sorry for book hauling the crap out of you lately, but that's why you'll see 2 book hauls from me. So let's just jump right into it. Otherwise, we'll be here for 17 years. First, my book of the month selection for July. This probably is no secret. It's Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is all over booktube, but if you need to know what it's about, this is the story of an apartment sitter. Only there's some very strange rules involved in being a particular apartment sitter. That's as far as I want to delve into this. And people have already read it. People have been talking about it. Like I said, it's all over booktube and I'm avoiding it. That's enough of the synopsis to get me hooked. Like, I'm already like, what? This is the 3rd Riley Sager book that I have, because it's the 3rd Riley Sager book that's been featured as a book of the month, which I don't know what's happening there. But I have read The Final Girls. I have yet to read The Last Time I Lied. And of course, this is the 3rd book, Lock Every Door. Next, let me tell you about the pre-orders. First is Growing Things by Paul Tremblay. Paul Tremblay is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. This is a short story collection by the author, though, all to do with things that grow. As with any short story collection, I'm hearing mixed things about the actual stories themselves. Some are good, some are bad, some are, whatever. But that's to be expected. It's still going to be one key book in determining if this dude is really a favorite author or not. Stay tuned for that experiment. Next, we have this chunker, What Was I Thinking? Called The Wanderers. Not The Wanderers, just called Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. But this is the story of a sleepwalking affliction that descends upon the world. And, well, it looks like sleepwalking, but basically, subconsciously, all of these people start walking, and they can't be distracted. So you don't get responses when you talk to them. I mean, they are literally out there and they're walking. And weirdly enough, they're all walking towards the same destination, but nobody knows what that destination is. So it begins to look a lot like the apocalypse up in there. And I think it's a worldwide thing. This would be my first Chuck Wendig book. And, what are we logging here? We're talking about 780 pages. So, word on the street about this book so far is that it's enjoyable. It's an interesting concept. However, it does get a little political, like this author tends to do, if you follow this person on social media. So, that's been a real turnoff for a couple of folks that I know. But I'm still excited about it. Even though it's large. It will probably take me 20 years to read this book. The next pre-order is The Dead Girl in 2A. This is by Carter Wilson. This is the story of a man who gets seated on a plane next to this woman that turns out is suicidal. And she's flying to where she's flying to because that's where she wants to kill herself. And that doesn't sit well with our main character. So when the plane lands, he tries to intercept her, but she gets away. She vanishes, and he makes it his mission to find her and stop her from killing herself. Turns out, though, they have something in common. Like, there's some sort of connection between the suicidal woman and our main character. I don't know what it is. It sounded good. It's about 400 pages. I mean, this isn't anything to sneeze at either. And then next I have The Toll by Sherry Priest. Okay, so this is the story, if you'll recall, of a couple who's traveling and they come to this like 1-lane bridge in the middle of nowhere. And next thing you know, the husband wakes up in the middle of the road, alone, no car, no wife. And he calls the police, panicked, and the police tell him, there's no bridge there. Like, we don't know what you're talking about. The road you claim you're on, there is no bridge. You're obviously a nut job. But it sounded interesting to me, and it introduced me to Sherry Priest, who I hadn't heard of before. I picked up another book by her while I was waiting for this one to come out. No, I didn't read it. Stop asking. She's kind of a little more, I'd never heard of her, and that's why I suck. Next, I picked up Breakaway by Heather M. Orgeron. I bought this book because of Heather M. Orgeron, who co-authored another book that I read earlier this year called Heartbreak Warfare, which was a phenomenal book. And that book was co-authored with Kate Stewart, whom I've heard of, but I haven't read. I had never heard of Heather M. Orgeron, so I was intrigued when I saw one of her books. This is a self-published sports romance / second chance romance / friends to lovers romance. Jesus. About a girl who fell in love with her best friend, but that best friend took an opportunity instead of that relationship, and then when he realizes that she's the one, he comes back and she's engaged to be married, or it's a little ambiguous. It's called Breakaway. It looks like he plays basketball. I love self-published romance. Speaking of which, I also bought Lies by Kylie Scott. I love Kylie Scott. This is a story similar to The Spy Who Dumped Me, a movie starring Mila Kunis and Kate. I can't remember her name. But Betty, which is a weird romance heroine name, Betty and Tom are in a relationship, and Betty is bored to tears. And so she decides to break things off with Tom because he's boring. But come to find out, shortly thereafter, their apartment explodes, and it is revealed that he's a secret operative, only playing the boring guy. And then he has to try to keep her alive. A romantic suspense. Sounds like it might have a flair of comedy to it based on the way the synopsis is written. But Kylie Scott, again, I like her a lot. Mostly I've read her rock star romance books, which are... Next, I picked up The Fold. This is by Peter Clines. This is a time-traveling novel. I love it. I love teleportation. I love time travel. I love alternate dimensions. That's my kind of science fiction. This is blurbed by Mira Grant, who is Shawnee McGuire. As a fun, brilliant read, has everything I want in a science fiction novel. So I agree. Those are my favorite kinds of science fiction novels because I think that they're the most fascinating. I don't like, creature, alien science fiction stuff. I love investigation into man-made capabilities science fiction. Next, I picked up The Water Cure, a book that has completely, look at that, haunted me and enticed me since it came out earlier this year. But it's a dystopian-ish novel about a world in which women are in a lot of danger. At least that's what these three sisters are told by their father. He raises them isolated from society. They've never seen another man except for their father. And then their father dies or disappears, and some other men show up. And it's about their reactions to the other men. It sounds a lot like the part of Stillwater Girls by Minka Kent that I actually liked. The part where these girls are raised with their parents cultivating this perception in them that is not actual reality. I have a feeling that's where this is going. I could be totally wrong, but to me it sounds like the dad was a little overprotective and wanted to make his kids, his daughters, fear men. So, Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I've liked one book by Christina Lauren. So I've not hated two, but I've disliked two books by Christina Lauren. Dating You, Hating You, and Roomies. And I've loved The Unhoneymooners. So, Love in Other Words, along with their next release, Twice in a Blue Moon, are going to be my Christina Lauren experiment, where I decide if I continue to pursue an author-reader relationship with this pair. So Love in Other Words is about a second chance romance where a man and a woman bump into each other after several years have passed. And when they were teenagers, they were experimenting with love and intimacy and those sorts of things. I think this one is probably a bit more serious than the other ones that I've read. Again, I could be completely mistaken. There's an air of humor or romantic comedy in the Christina Lauren books that I don't feel with this one. I feel like this isn't funny. I have another independently published romance. This is called Well Suited by Stacey Hart. This is a brand new release. It is about a woman who gets pregnant after a one-night stand, and she's completely compartmentalized it. Only the father of the child thinks that they really need to be together and give this a go. So it's kind of a flip side, an alternate take on what is traditionally the story, which is the woman pursuing a relationship. But in this book, she's a scientist. I think she's a chemist, a biochemist or a chemist. She's, somebody who doesn't believe in love. And it's all very practical to her. And yet this guy wants to seduce basically the woman that's already carrying his child. Also independently published and recently released is The Prenup by Lauren Lane. It's about a woman who 10 years prior married her brother's best friend, and then she never saw him again. It doesn't say why she never saw him again, but now they've reconnected, or she does bump into him or something. Like, he's there now. Obviously, I'm not sure what this has to do with it. It's very vague, very ambiguous, but there was something so intriguing about it. Next, I did pick up The Wilder Girls. This is a brand new release, hardcover, but I got it for like $6 on Amazon, which is really strange. So it's been described as sort of a female version of Lord of the Flies, with queer characters and a similar psychology, but it's actually kind of the story about a group of girls in an all-girls school on an island, and that school, people start coming down with this disease called the tox, and it spreads slowly and it alters their biology. And the girls who are left, they have to fend for themselves. The outside world has promised a cure, but they're quarantined and they have to fend for themselves. And they basically become wild, kind of like the destruction of polite, civilized behavior. Next, I picked up the book Meet Cute. This is by Helena Hunting. This is another experiment. Helena Hunting, for me, I read the first book in her hockey romance series called Pucked, and I hated it. So I have Good Luck Charm by this author, and I've now purchased Meet Cute. We're going to do an experiment on whether or not Helena Hunting is a lost cause for me, or if it gets better. But this is the story of a young woman who literally has a meet cute with a former A-list actor, and she kind of embarrasses herself, but they become good friends. He does something to betray her, and then later on in life calls upon her for her help. I don't typically like books about actors or actresses, so I might be setting this whole thing up for failure by purchasing a book about an actor. I picked up, finally, The Suspect by Fiona Barton. I do own The Widow and The Child. I haven't read them. But oddly enough, The Widow is listed on like the 100 greatest thrillers of all times list. I got this when the price went down. Basically, it's a 2019 release. This one dipped below $17, around $14 or $15, so I bought it because, I mean, it's a $26 regular retail price. I'm here for the bargain shopping. I also totally caved, and bought Hangman by Jack Heath. This is the first book in a series featuring this character. It's a series of books about this FBI consultant who is great at his job, but he has this rule, this neurosis, sees this one little thing. Every time he saves a life, he has to take a life. And so it's horror in a Dextery sounding kind of way. But this has quickly become something that I'm really excited to read. This particular story is about a boy who vanishes on his way home, and his mom receives a ransom call. So the FBI reaches out to their consultant, this guy named Blake, Timothy Blake. He's the main character, and he's supposed to be this phenomenal crime-solving genius with this problem that he has to take a life whenever he saves a life. And so he's trying to save the boy, catch the kidnapper, but it's proving difficult, and he's being forced to work with a woman in the bureau from his past. They have some sort of connection. So crime thriller meets horror novel is my understanding. If you have any questions about or have any experience with any of the books that I mentioned in this book haul, please leave all those goodies down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon.